What's going on, everyone? It is a brand new week, which means we got a bunch of new cards to talk about, including a new Anakin leader, a card we've been waiting for since the kind of initial set 3 spoilers, and one of the most unique and interesting units that we have seen in all of Star Wars Unlimited. So big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. The scrolling names have gotten smaller and smaller because there's more of you supporting the channel, which I really appreciate, so thank you. And also, I have a TCG player link in the description down below. Be sure to use it for all of your set 3 and any Star Wars Unlimited card needs. Let's get started and talk about a card, as I said, that you all have been waiting for since the release of set 3, or I should say, since the initial spoiling. Droideka Security, our first Droideka unit. 6 cost ground unit in Vigilance Villainy, 4/5 Separatist Droid, Exploit 2, and Sentinel. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but honestly, one of the more powerful exploit cards that we have seen so far in terms of just like common payoffs. I guess I shouldn't say one of the most powerful because then you're comparing to like Count Dooku and something like that. But I think this actually has a good amount of potential. Immediately, I'm thinking Newt Gunray, right? Because it's in Vigilance. But this is essentially a 2-cost 4/5 Sentinel in ground, which actually does a good amount of work. And remember, with something like Newt Gunray, you can replace one of the exploit options when you go ahead and get Droideka down. But also, if you're playing this for 4 resources, it's not too bad either. A 4/5 Sentinel for 4 is pretty good. That stat line is on par with a lot of the 4 resource plays that we've seen, and it's got Sentinel, which is really, really important. The thing that I see with these types of Sentinels now is if we do have some sort of token theme in set 3, Sentinels are going to get a lot better, mainly because you're going to find that all of these units now have to go through this way higher statted unit. Can you imagine if your opponent has like 2 to 3 to 4 clone trooper tokens? Suddenly this thing kills basically all of them. It kills 3 clone trooper tokens if they try to get through it, which is a huge game. So I think Sentinel does have some potential to be even better, even though it's already good in set 2 and set 1. I think set 3 is even better. And Separatist and Droid tags are pretty important for a lot of these set 3 leaders. And this one just seems like a very nice, good value unit for it to come down with 4 resources, 4/5 Sentinel. Again, you'd have to exploit something, but if you're an exploit deck, especially in like a Newt Gunray, it kind of just replaces itself. You sacrifice a battle droid, you create a new battle droid. Seems pretty straightforward to me. I actually like Droideka a decent amount. Sentinel makes me excited about this. Not a crazy Droideka, which I think a lot of us were expecting, but a solid one. Next up, we got the brand new leader in Anakin Skywalker, and my goodness, guys, this is an insane leader. Like, I really like Yoda. I know some people don't like him as much. I think this is up there with one of the best leaders from set 3 alongside Yoda. So let's talk about this one a little bit. We have a Heroism Aggression Anakin Skywalker with an action, deal 2 damage to your base and exhaust this leader, attack with a unit. If it's attacking a unit, it gets +2/+0 for this attack. And then we flip for 6 resources for a 4/7. And he gets the Force, Jedi, and Republic tags. The Force and Republic tags are pretty relevant for the most part. He has Overwhelm, which is extremely relevant. And he gets +1/+0 for every 5 damage on your base. So many things to talk about here. First off, his front side action. This is really massive. So normally, anytime we see a pump effect, it usually is not in conjunction with an attack of this size. So for example, Moff Gideon is just a +1/+0. We have like Leia who's attacking, but it doesn't give any pump effects. +2/+0 is a lot. It doesn't give overwhelm to your unit, but attacking another unit allows you to trade up massively. Just think about what a normal curve would be like. Let's say you're playing, I don't know, a Fighters for Freedom on turn 2, and your opponent plays like a Battlefield Marine, or maybe they're playing like, I don't know, a Cassian Andor. Suddenly, this Fighters for Freedom can actually just outperform your Cassian Andor because you can allow it to attack for 2 additional points of damage as a 5/4. If your opponent deploys like their Sabine leader, suddenly your Fighters for Freedom can actually just straight up kill Sabine. And you might be saying, oh, we have to deal 2 damage to your base. Isn't that a big downside? Well, if you think about it, it's not really that big of a downside in these scenarios, because if you are trading up with a weaker unit and you get that unit to survive, which isn't super unlikely, or even if you don't get that unit to survive, that opposing unit would have automatically been able to deal damage to your base had you not had something to deal with it, either using this action or having some sort of other removal option. But if you're playing a normal aggression heroism deck, you're usually playing out units and you're trading with opposing units. So this gives you that option, which you otherwise did not have, to kill things like Sabine Leader with like a Battlefield Marine. Battlefield Marine just straight up kills Sabine Leader and lives, which is absolutely absurd. So that's a really powerful one, but then it pays you off later on in the game. And let's not even consider overwhelm units like K2SO. Suddenly your K2SO gets to attack for 6 and hits the base. That's already insane. But let's consider the flip side. You flip on turn 5 and you've used this action a couple times. Your opponents hit your base. Let's just say you've had like 10 damage on your base, which is not that unlikely. He's a 6 flip, 6/7 overwhelm. That is a massive stat line and actually is worthwhile to wait for a little bit longer to actually get him on the battlefield. So I'm actually really excited about this guy. I think this Anakin leader does have a lot of potential. His front side action seems really good to me, even though there's extra damage on your base. We'll have to see whether or not this is going to cause you to lose more games than actually provide more advantages, right? Because if you are dealing a bunch of damage to your own base, then are you going to just get absolutely overrun by like a good Sabine draw? It's possible, and maybe that's action isn't really useful in that specific game. So that's something to keep in mind. But he's also an aggressive heroism unit or leader, which means you can run ECL with him, which is a little bit scary, especially if you're dealing damage to your own base. But this seems like a leader that can give you a ton of value over the course of a game. Not to mention, you could also just be playing more value-centric, like aggression, vigilance, Anakin Skywalker, and then healing up some of your damage while also making your kind of weaker units like village protectors, for example, go ahead and attack into other units while getting that +2/+0 so the damage affects you less. And there's a lot of different options you could go with, but the fact that he flips over as at least a 5/7 for like vast majority of cases, and most likely like a 6/7 if you are using that front side action by the time Anakin comes down, is pretty interesting to me. I think he is a little bit above average. I am pretty excited about him. It just depends on kind of what we're able to construct alongside him, whether it's maybe we put in some healing to prevent or to offset some of the damage, or maybe it's just to go full token routes and use these clone trooper tokens as 4/2s instead of 2/2s, which could be interesting as well. So I like this guy. I think he has a lot of potential, and I am pretty excited about him. I do like Yoda a lot more, I will say, but he's kind of like up there with me as one of my more excited leaders, alongside like Count Dooku and Nute Gunray with Anakin Skywalker. Next up, we got a couple new cards, a couple new rares to talk about in 5s and Saw Gerrera. We have a 5-cost ground unit in Cunning, 5s, 5/5. Perfect. I love what they did. Republic Clone Trooper, Saboteur. When you play an event, you may put a clone unit from your discard pile on the bottom of your deck. If you do, draw a card. So first off, 5 resource, 5/5, not really that exciting. We see 5 resource 6/6s pretty commonly now. And we see, heck, even some like 4 resources things that can trade up into 5s, which means that I'm a little bit less excited about this guy. The question is, are you going to be able to get relevant use out of his traits or out of his ability? So his traits, Republic Clone Trooper, all relevant traits, all important traits. And if you're in a Republic deck, I think this is something that you might want to consider just because of the traits of themselves. This event, or when you play events, you get to go ahead and basically draw a card if you happen to have had a clone unit die. Remember, that clone unit has to have been an actual card and not a token, because it's not going to be in your discard pile. I don't think is very relevant. Even if it's a 5 resource 5/5 that draws you 2 cards, I still don't think that's necessarily something that you're like really, really excited about for the most part. There is something that I think could work with 5s, and that is using 0-cost events to draw you into more 0-cost events and kind of using or abusing this ability to draw more cards and abusing the fact that you have 0/1-cost events that can do some work. But I am just not super impressed with this one. Also, why is he not a heroism unit? The whole idea of 5 is like he's trying to save the entirety of the clone brethren by, exposing the inhibitor chip secret. He's got to have the heroism tag, right? Like, I don't know. I know some people are like, well, clones, they kill all the Jedi, so of course they don't have the heroism tag. But 5s, I mean, this guy, he almost saved it all. Okay, he should have the heroism tag. Anyways, by the way, Saw Gerrera has the heroism tag, being like this absolute. I'm just, these two should be swapped. I think Saw Gerrera should actually not have the heroism tag, despite being like a resistance fighter. He just tends to use a little bit more aggressive means. But we have a 6-cost ground unit in aggression heroism, 4/8 with a fringe trooper tag. Raid 2, on attack, if your base has 15 or more damage on it, deal 1 damage to each enemy ground unit. So this one's pretty interesting to me. As I said, with 5s, we have like 5 resource 6/6s now. As we get up to 6 resource, so we see like 6/7s, 7/6s. That's the type of stat line we're looking at. So this one's kind of like a 6/8, which is a little bit better. But it doesn't have 6 power on defense, which is actually extremely relevant because of ECL Kylos, ECL Wreckers, ECL Podamrans. All those things come in and just annihilate Saw Gerrera and don't even like get anything back. You don't even get anything back. Like, you don't kill Podamran, you don't kill Wrecker or anything like that. So that's a little bit unfortunate, which I think will hurt him a little bit. He doesn't have like the Republic tag or the clone tag. Fringe tag doesn't really have any relevance right now. Trooper tag does, but overall the raid 2 can come in and can do some work. I'm a little bit curious about this on attack trigger. It's like a fallen lightsaber essentially, but you have to have 15 more damage on your base, which I think isn't going to be too difficult when he comes down on 6 resources. Similar to how I think about Anakin. I'm seeing him get like +2, maybe even +3 power on the regular when he comes down. And I think Saw Gerrera is going to be very similar in that note. He is a decent ECL target because you can come down, hits for essentially 7 on one thing, and then 1 to each other enemy ground unit if you do have that on attack trigger. But overall, I'm not super impressed with Saw Gerrera. I think that if you're comparing aggression heroism units that you want in ECL, Wrecker is like 9 times out of 10 better. He's literally in the exact same colors, has like the exact same tags, if I'm not mistaken. I think Wrecker even has the clone tag as well. So just like straight up better tags than Saw Gerrera here. But anyways, on to the next one here in clone. I am extremely excited about this one. So this is the most unique unit I have seen in its entirety of Star Wars Unlimited. We have a 7-cost ground unit in command named Clone. It's a 0/0 with the clone tag. You may have this unit enter play as a copy of a non-leader, non-vehicle unit in play, except it gains the clone trait and is not unique. So this thing is pretty interesting. I don't know how good it is the thing, but it is extremely, extremely unique. So, of course, you can choose any unit in play, as long as it's non-leader, non-vehicle, and just make a copy of it. So you can make a copy of Wrecker, you can make a copy of Podamran, and all those types of things. And I'm not 100% sure on how this is worded. I haven't looked into the responses yet, or if someone's asked about clone, but it says you may have this unit enter play as a copy of a non-leader, non-vehicle unit in play. And I believe that should trigger when played abilities, because you are playing this card and it sees whatever you chose as it enters. So you did play this card and it enters in as whatever card that you chose. And so that should trigger when played abilities. So things like Wrecker and Luke Skywalker should activate when you play this card. But I think the most important part of this is that it gains the clone trait and is not unique. So what this allows you to do, for example, let's say you're playing Luke Green, you can play your Luke Skywalker, then the following turn you can play another Luke Skywalker, and you don't have to sacrifice your other Luke Skywalker because it's not unique. That's the cool part about this. I think anything else, you're kind of fishing for something. Like, you're not really going to be cloning expensive stuff all that often. You do want to be cloning like a 7 resource play or more, but you're not going to be cloning like 8, 9, 10 drops all that often, or even Luke Skywalker's all that often, because by the time that happens, you're probably already in a pretty good spot. I will say the 7 resource point is where you might be using this, and it actually kind of leads to more wins. But when you're getting redemptions down, when you're getting like, I don't know, you're not limited by heroism or villainy, so you can like get Avengers down and copy Avengers and things like that. I think that's more of like a win more situation rather than actually just like a good play. I would think that this is just a little bit too expensive to be playing reliably. I would have loved to see this as like a 6 or 5 resource option, because that's when I look at this card and I'm like, ooh, now we have some potential here to do some major cool things. When you're in the late game, you can make this play and something else to kind of do some big things like a replay, a Darth Vader, or get another Maul out there, even though you already have one. That's where it gets a little bit more exciting to me. Because it costs 7, I guess you already have to have Darth Vader and Maul out, or Luke Skywalker out. So it's not like that big of a downside, but I would love to make like another play afterwards with this clone effect. I think this actually does have some potential though. I don't know how good it is, as we haven't had this type of effect in the game yet. Normally this type of effect is a little bit weak because you have to have some units in play in order for you to use this, and it's so expensive that you're kind of relying on either your opponent or yourself to have other cards to combo with it, when you could have just played like Mauls and Vaders in this spot, or Luke Skywalkers and things like that. So I guess we'll have to see, but it is absolutely sweet, don't get me wrong. And lastly, we have another 2 resource play in Bo-Katan Kryze. Aggression Villainy, 2/3 Mandalorian Trooper. While you control another Mandalorian unit, it gains Overwhelm and Saboteur. And while you control another Trooper unit or control another Trooper, this unit gets +1/+0. So she has the potential to be a 3/3 Overwhelm Saboteur, which is a really nice stat line. So I've been playing a lot of random cards with Saboteur lately, because there's a lot of shields out there. Crafty Smuggler, Dr. Evazan, there's Village Protectors, there's just all these random shield cards that make Saboteur a lot more interesting to me. But this being a 2 resource 2/3 base level is not the worst. It's not great. It's definitely below average. As soon as you have another Mandalorian unit, it becomes like an average 2 resource play, Overwhelm and Saboteur. And if you have a Trooper and a Mandalorian unit, which is very common to have the 2 in the same because Mandalorians are oftentimes Troopers, you're going to find that it's a 3/3 Overwhelm Saboteur, which is actually pretty good. And I could definitely see a situation where I'm just thinking about the card. I think it's Mandalorian Warrior, and I believe that card does have those exact tags. And if you like curve into Mandalorian Warrior with Bo-Katan, you could actually have some pretty interesting things going on. I guess I'm wrong. It's just a Mandalorian. It doesn't actually have the Trooper tag. But I'm thinking like, okay, you have Mandalorian Warrior. If we just type in Mandalorian here, you have a lot of different options. Of course, this is more in like the pre-Vizsla style of deck versus like the Mandalorian or like a Bo-Katan deck, because it's the villainy. But if you look here, Super Commando Squad has the Mandalorian and Trooper tag. Follower of the Way just has the Mandalorian tag, so no Trooper there. We have Pre-Vizsla, Mandalorian Trooper, Deathwatch Loyalist, Mandalorian Trooper, Bo-Katan, Mandalorian Trooper. As you can see, there's a lot of Mandalorian and Trooper tags in combination. Here's the tricky part about this, is that a lot of them are in heroism as well. And so you're not really going to be able to play those. So to me, this seems more interesting as a 2 resource 3/3. Because you'll have troopers on the battlefield, and this is just a trooper. That's what I think is more likely. Like, you'll be playing the new aggression villainy deck. You'll have like a battle droid token or a clone trooper token or whatever, and that's a trooper, and it gets +1/+0, and that's way more interesting to me. So I think that's where this card seems to be going, but I suppose we'll have to wait and see. I'm not as excited about the Mandalorian part because there's not as many Mandalorians, but I think trooper is going to be pretty common. That said, let me know what you think about all these cards today. Droideka here, first Droideka that we've seen. New Anakin. I think this card's actually pretty sweet. I'm excited about it. I am a little bit worried about the 2 damage to your base, but I'm a little bit higher on it than maybe some of you are. We have 5s in Saw Gerrera. Not as excited about these 2, but 5s. Absolutely love the flavor here. Clone, the most unique unit that we've had in the game so far, and Bo-Katan. Let me know what you think about all of them in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all for the next one.